All right, good morning, agents. This is Kevin Lauren. I'm the Director of Training and Marketing, and today we're going to be going over some more compliance training with Lauren Noack. So this is really important stuff. We've got to make sure our files are buttoned up properly, and it just makes everybody more compliant. It makes your license safe. So we don't want to have our license pulled. We don't want to have any problems going forward. So compliance is a really big issue. So it'll be a good refresher for some and a new kind of go through for a lot of the new agents. We do have a lot of new agents on the line today. So welcome everybody. Welcome Alex Wynn, brand new agent. We've got a lot of new agents on the line today. Good morning, Elaine. Good morning, Marciana Scott, brand new agent. Good morning, Natasha, Stefan Mueller. Good morning as well. So before we get into today's presentation, I'm going to bring on Bill Seitz from Clearview Mortgage. Good morning, Bill. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Kevin. I'm doing great.
All right, fantastic. And I'll, of course, also bring Cameron on the line from Clearview Mortgage. All right, good morning, Cameron. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Kev. How's it going?
Fantastic.
Good.
Absolutely. Always excited to have everybody here on the Wednesdays. Get all fired up. So yeah, Bill, anything to start us off with?
No, for sure. I know this is not the maybe the most sexiest topic in what we do as a real estate brokerage, but it's a necessary topic. And I think hopefully everybody on the line will get good understanding of how we all take part in running an efficient brokerage. And that's from file submission, file review, and getting paid, which is everyone's favorite part of real estate, is getting the big check. So I'm excited about this webinar because I really think that for some new agents or existing agents that aren't 100% clear on what the process is, this should give a better understanding of how you can thrive and succeed on our platform and what the expectations are. And I think if we all do our part there, it should be a very easy, seamless procedure, and you should be walking away with your check the day the deal closes or as soon as escrow is ready to release funds. So I'll obviously add more as we let Lauren take the helm here, but I think that's the overview from my perspective.
All right, good. Well, I appreciate that, Bill. And so before we get into the presentation, Cameron, what's happening out there in mortgage land?
All right, guys. So as we know, we're in a little bit of a market shift here today. This week marks the basically fourth week in a row that interest rates have increased. So basically ending 2021 and the start of 2022, they've went up to the point where the par rate for a purchase right now is about a 3.7 to 3.6%. So almost a percentage point increase from a little over a month ago when the 10-year treasury sat at 1.4%. It's now at 1.845%. So quite the increase there, but I think that we have a chance that at least momentarily they could kind of soften up for a little bit until the Feds actually release a true rate hike, which we'll see what the effect is on the market when that happens. So, but to put that into perspective, on a $600,000 loan, the difference in payment from 299 to 3.7 is $240 extra a month. So an increase in rates can affect the payment quite a bit, which everybody knows. But so just keep that in mind with your clients that you're working with. And as rates continue to increase with record high housing values, I just read some data today that was pretty impressive. But experts are thinking it's possible to see anywhere from a 3 to 8% decrease in sales prices over the next year or two in the most expensive areas of the country if rates climb to above about a mid-4 region. However, in the far more, with all these remote workers and prices being lower in smaller cities, they're expecting for prices in those cities to continue to go up as people start bidding more in those areas as they move their families there. So something else that's interesting is Riverside, California was the fastest growing metro area as far as rent increases year over year in the entire country at 15% increase in 1 year, which definitely shows that the trend in California is most definitely to move to, these smaller cities from like LA, San Francisco, or San Diego, for example. And another part that was really interesting on that data is that almost 80% of the people that were moving had at least one child. So it's families that are moving 100%. And then of the top 10 fastest growing cities in California for 2021, only one of the cities had a population of over 200,000 people, and that city was Irvine. So those smaller suburban areas are a great place to try and make connections and take advantage of all that growth and families moving to that area. So that's definitely something that you guys could use to your advantage. So once again, if you're working with a client who has a pre-approval that's a little bit over like a month old, make sure to have them reevaluated. And we can always help you with that to make sure that you know what price range they're most competitive in so that you can submit the strongest offer possible. Because obviously there's been quite a change over the past month. So you just want to protect yourself and your client. And then last week, we did send out those document checklists that were basically to make it easier for you to get a quick pre-approval for your clients if they're not already working with somebody. If you didn't receive it, or you're a new realtor and that's on this call and you need to get it, feel free to contact us directly, or maybe we'll just go ahead and resend it to everybody if that wasn't the case. But I'll communicate with Kevin on that. But that's pretty much all that I have for today. And happy Wednesday, everybody. And it's always a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Cameron. That's really good insight. We really appreciate that. So those are really cool things to be able to share with your clients, especially clients that are thinking about, moving or thinking about, selling or buying. So very, very cool insights there, Cameron. Appreciate that.
You got it, Kev.
All right, cool. So let's not delay. And I'm going to bring Lauren on the line. Good morning, Lauren. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. It's good to have you back on the webinar. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. So I'm going to take my screen share away, and you should be able to share your screen. Theoretically, right? No,
Yeah. Let's see here.
that looks perfect.
Okay. Awesome.
So great. Yeah. So Lauren, let's get into today's topic here. So compliance is super important, and we've just got to make sure that all of our agents are filling out especially with the new RPA, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Everybody's got to be able to understand how to navigate our system properly, because we want to just set the expectations as good as we can. That way, everybody can expect how this system works, and that it can work well within our system. So take it away, Lauren.
Exactly. Yes. The end goal in any agent broker relationship really is the agent wants to get money, and the broker doesn't want to lose all of their money in a lawsuit. So it's kind of this little give and take. And so what we're going to be touching on today a little bit is, like you were saying, Kevin, setting those expectations on so that you guys as the agents know what we're looking for and what this process is. It's not secret, it's not behind the scenes. We want to let you know exactly what this process looks like so that you are better prepared for your transactions, whether you have many going on now, whether you might have one in a few months. We want this to be a resource for you. So I just want to start, I guess, with the basics here. First and foremost is just logging in. You would have gotten an invite if you guys were with Alta when we switched from SkySlope to Dotloop. You would have gotten an initial invite also once you've signed up. But if you at that point when you received that invite, didn't see it or didn't log in or don't remember, it's been a while, all you have to do is just go to dotloop.com, enter in your email, and then you can just say forgot password. We don't store your passwords. We don't have access to your passwords, so we can't let you know what that password is. So just go there, say forgot password, reset it, and you can jump in from there. Once
yeah,
you
and then of course, if for some reason that email doesn't work, just contact me, and I'll make sure to make sure that you may have signed up with Alta with a certain email, and then you're using a different email. Who knows? So if there's a trouble there, just contact me directly, Kevin, and I can help you with that.
Exactly. So once you do log in, you should see this, the Alta logo up at the top. If you log in and you don't see it, or if it's all kind of like this lighter blue color, then you're in the wrong email, and it's not the correct account. So you want to make sure that when you log in, you see Alta Premium up at the top, and that's how you know you're gonna be on board with us. And so the first thing that we want to do is we'll want to start our initial loop, right? And so in order to do that, if you haven't done any yet, there'll be kind of like a graphic here in the middle of the page that is like open a loop. But if you need to add a new one, you just go over here to the add loop button.
So a loop is a transaction, everybody. Just, the people that have used it, now they know that loops are transactions. So, that's
exactly.
I've had a little bit of confusion there, like, what the heck's a loop?
Yeah, it's a file. It's how you submit per transaction, per property,
right.
Per escrow, basically. And you want to add your loop as soon as possible. So if you have a listing, upload it as a listing. So really the broker for the DRE has to keep a record of all of this paperwork. So when you have a listing and you don't submit it until escrow is about to close, that could get us in big trouble. So we want to make sure all the documentation that you have, that we also have access to it as well, and that we have the copies of it. So you'll go in, you'll add a new loop. It's going to ask you what the name is. You can link it up to MLS if you want to search for your MLS, listing. It might pull some of the details and information from that. Really, you could name it whatever you want, but it's kind of easier for our office if it's just a property address, because that's how people reference their files most often. They'll like, I need this document on Main Street, or, that sort of a thing. So instead of referencing that MLS number. And so as most demo files go, we're going to name this one Main Street. You can always change it later. And then this part is really important as far as the templates go. This is going to preload into your loop designated folders and designated placeholder documents on how what is needed to upload for the file. So when you click the drop down, there are a lot of different options, and we're still working on creating additional ones, commercial lists and a couple of other transaction specific checklists. But this is basically the templates that you're going to want to use. If it's just a regular sale, whether it's your seller or your buyer. Exempt seller, so if this is a probate or if it's an REO, and then it really only specific instances of trusts. If the seller is a successor trustee, hasn't lived in the property within the last year, then they would be exempt. But you have those options there as well. Leases, if you represent the landlord or the tenant, and then vacant land, and then referrals only. This is just if you have a referral, we do need still some basic information and documents for just collecting your referral check. So those are the templates that we have there now. And really the difference between the seller version and the buyer version is the seller side or dual agency side is going to include listing document requirements and things like that. So so you would just select your folder or your template. You can upload a photo if you want to, you don't have to. Sometimes if you're pulling from MLS, it will do it for you automatically. And then it will it'll create the loop for you. This is where if you uploaded the photo, it would be in place of this house picture. But from here, you can update some specifics. You don't have to, but again, it's helpful on our end to have these details, and you can also update it once you get into the actual loop. But you can say, okay, this is my listing so far. You have a couple options as far as your types go. It's an active listing and we've listed it at 500,000. It's still a listing, so we don't have a closing date. And then this little bar here will start to fill in as you get your file more and more complete and you get closer to this closing date. So it's kind of a nice, when you have a big dashboard full of a lot of transactions, it's sort of a quick visual reference for how far along you are. From here, you would just go into view your loop and this will open up the loop for you. So you'll see here that we have all of these document placeholders already pre-filled. There's a couple different folders, and then within each folder are the documents that would be associated with this specific grouping of documents. And so a couple of things on this before I move on. One, previously when we first started, we made some of these documents, the options here were optional or required, or I take it back, optional or required to submit, which meant that if this document was marked as required to submit, you could not submit your file for review unless it was uploaded. And so we initially had all the documentation that one would definitely need on this specific type of file marked as required, but we found that it was preventing people from being able to submit their file for review if they were just missing maybe one document in a long list of, disclosures or offer documents or things like that. Maybe they were waiting on one signature or so. These all now say optional. That does not mean if you feel like it, please upload it. There are still documents that are going to be required for each transaction. And the best way to kind of go about it is just assume that the documents listed here, essentially they're conditionally required. So for example, if in your contract documents that you've uploaded, there is possession will be 3 days after close of escrow, then your seller in possession form will be required. Keep that in mind as I kind of go back in a minute as far as the review process and submitting the documents. But a better idea of what is required is to review the document checklist, the broker checklist that we have. Right now, these are uploaded to the exempt seller checklist and the the standard sale checklists templates. So, but they will be adding them to the other ones as well here shortly. But these are pre-uploaded forms and documents that you have for reference. And you'll see the difference between the placeholder, which is this light gray, and a file placeholder that already has a document uploaded to it. The placeholder is grayed out and it's a dead link. You can't click on it and open it. If you've uploaded something, it will show as bold. And so this is our broker checklist. And so when you first log in, it'll kind of give you these little guides and things like that to the transaction as well. But this is the broker checklist, and this you'll see reflects exactly what is in the layout of the templates, right? So each folder is one of these groupings of these listing documents. You have your offer documents, some additional forms that you may or may not need or use depending on the transaction. And some of the feedback that we've received is it's a little hard to tell what documents are in bold and what aren't. So we'll work on making that a little bit more obvious. But the ones that are in bold are non-conditional documents, meaning we need these for every single file. For example, we are going to need an avid from you on a regular sale. We will need at least your avid. The other agent may or may not submit an avid. It also depends on the TDS and that sort of a thing, but it's not in bold. So one from the other agent isn't something that we need in order to release the CDA. The other thing that's really helpful with this checklist that the template in .loop doesn't have is it gives additional sort of reference information. So for here, when a document is conditional, you'll see what those conditions are. So the LPD, which is the lead-based paint disclosure, right? That used to be, I think the code was FLD. Anyway, the lead-based paint disclosure is not in bold, so it's not required. But how do you know when it is required? Well, then there's the explanation right here next to it. If the property was built prior to 1978.
So, Lauren, it's a really good idea for the agents, when they open a loop, to print this document out.
Exactly. And the other thing too, so this is that list of documents for quick reference. It's pre-uploaded into these loops, but if you don't have a loop yet, maybe you want to create one, but you just want to sort of prepare your file ahead of time. I want to show you guys where you can find it. So in your dashboard, or even if you're within your loop, you have a couple of these tabs up here. One of them is templates. When you click on that, it's sort of misleading because templates are what we applied, but you can't find them in here. That's the other thing to note. You can't apply or remove a template once it's already been created in the loop. So you'll go in under templates, and then you'll see right here, it's up at the very top, the Alta Realty Group master documents. And here are where you'll find the different checklists. And then you'll also find the file approval and CDA release process, which we'll get into in a second here. This one is just for residential. Again, I'm working on breaking them down in more transaction specific processes, but this will give you a general idea on how this all works or should work. And then also a copy of our affiliated disclosure form. So we do get questions every once in a while of like, I see this on the checklist, but where do I find it? This is where you would find it. This is where all the documents would be stored. So that's where you can just get copies to review those documents and the checklists if you need to. So going back into our loop, let me just make sure I'm touching on all the bullet points I wanted to here. That is where to find them. Okay, so now the logistics now of this documentation and how to get it into the file. There are a couple of things that people have had questions on or issues that they've run into that I just wanted to go over. So the first thing is just, how do I upload a document into here? Because I can't click on this thing on the actual placeholder. And if I click here to add document, these are the three options it gives you. And I need to get a document into this placeholder here. So in order to do that, you'll see when you hover over the file, in this column here, it changes from optional to add file. So you would just click on that, and you have the option to upload it from your computer, which is where the document would be stored, or from templates. And we can touch on that in a second, but typically people are going to upload things from the computer. And you'll see here there's a list of documents that are named their own specific name. When you upload a document into a placeholder, the document name will get overridden and this placeholder will still show up as the name. So for example, if I'm uploading this disclosure information advisory into that placeholder, it's now bold, which means there's a document in there, but it's still named that. So don't worry about trying to match names or, things like that. You'll also see that in red, it shows that it's not submitted. That's also the case for the entire folders, but it will also show for individual documents. And so you can go through here and you would upload each of these documents individually as needed, whatever you have initially in your file. And one of the other things that people have asked, sometimes they are like, I just want to dump the documents that I have and add them in here. But now I still have these placeholders. Maybe these are like duplicate placeholders. A really powerful tool in Dotloop is the drag and drop feature. So you can dump the documents that you have in here in your own file, however you have them named. And then you can drag and drop and basically hover over the placeholder, and it will load it into that placeholder. So you'll see it will say replace with contract demo. And so when you let go, now the contract demo file is gone, and now you have this placeholder is now filled. So sometimes that's a little easier. Instead of trying to figure out what did I upload and what did I not upload, you might just want to like dump everything in here, apply what goes into the checklist, and override those placeholders that way.
Yeah, that's
The other option. Yeah, the other option that you have is you can reorder these documents. So if, for example, sometimes there's placeholders right here for like buyer counteroffer, seller counter, seller multiple. Sometimes you have more than one. You can upload all the seller counteroffers together, or you can maybe upload, each individual buyer counteroffer. So let's say this is buyer counteroffer 1. And this was another a tip that I wanted to let you guys know as well. When you click on these 3 dots, you can also rename the document. So we can say this buyer counteroffer number 2. Okay, so now you can just rearrange. When you hover over the placeholder, it'll ask if you want to replace that specific placeholder, but then you can kind of see it moved. So now it's in between those 2 placeholders. So you can reorder those items. What if you've uploaded a buyer counteroffer, or let's say a seller counteroffer here, but oh shoot, I uploaded it into the listing documents. Same thing, you can drag and drop into different folders, and you can put it in whatever order you need to. You can replace it. And so a lot of times I'll see people have like kind of dumped all their documents into one folder, or they've created a new folder. And there's like disclosure documents that are up here in the listing documents. It makes it really hard just from a auditing perspective to try and keep track of like it would be ideal to keep those documents together. So in those specific categories. So it would be really helpful and be easier on that auditing process. If there's something that is, a disclosure, you just have to click and drag and bring it, all the way down to that specific section that it's related to.
Oh, that's easy. And Albert, we have one little comment. Albert says, was this to make our lives easier or harder? Well, Albert, good question there. This was made to make our lives easier in the long run, so we don't have to worry about bad stuff happening down the line with a possible DRE audit. So
exactly. And really knowing what is needed and why is going to make you a better agent and a better representative for your client as well, because these forms created by CAR have been not only just created by feedback from agents and created by the CAR legal team, but they've also been litigated to death as well. So, and again, we talked about this in the contract webinar. They're really meant to be neutral forms that equally protect both sides of a transaction. And so it's important to know that there really is a form for everything. So if there's something that you need to do, there's probably a form that's associated with it.
Yeah, a guy I worked with a long time ago, he put it this way with contracts. He says, contracts are every way that I can screw you and every way that you can screw me.
Exactly.
Ways to prevent every way I can screw you or you can screw me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's pretty blunt there. Thank you. Sure.
But really, when you get to the point of litigation, that's what all parties are looking at anyway, is like, how can I stick it to them, so.
Exactly. And then one last comment from our our Albert, who's always giving
Yes.
fun comments. He says, I guess it's a good idea to hire a TC. Bingo, Albert.
I mean, I'm partial to that suggestion, but yes, this is as the TC, we know, and for me and my team personally, we always, our goal is to be a resource for our agents. And I always try and tell our agents, tell us what you want to do, and we'll let you know the form that goes along with it. So, because there literally is a form for everything. And if I were to even list, this isn't even everything that could possibly be in an offer document, right? And so that's the other thing to keep in mind. If you submit your file and there's something in here, for example, if it is a seller 1031 exchange, there is actually a form that is a 1031 exchange form for sellers and one for buyers. It's not listed on here, but maybe the file will get audited and you'll get a message back that says, we need the SXA form, which is the seller intent to exchange form. And so you'll go and you'll get that form and it won't be uploaded, or you don't have a placeholder to upload it to. That's when you would just go in and add a document, and you can just manually upload your document and submit it from there. So just because there's not a placeholder doesn't mean there's not a place for the document, if that doesn't confuse everybody to death. Okay, so
clear.
A couple of on that sort of note, sometimes they're a way to make it a little bit less overwhelming in the document process. What I like to do, just even as a TC in our backend systems or any other sort of broker system, when I go in, I'll go through this document list and figure out what does and does not apply necessarily. So as your TC, or as you get more familiar, or if you already are familiar, of things that may or may not apply, right? So if you open escrow and you have the contract initially, you're going to know in that contract if this is going to be maybe contingent on the seller finding a replacement property, or contingent on the buyer purchasing or selling their home first. And so you'll know right away, like, well, these aren't going to apply, but they're in this long list. It might get overwhelming. What you can do is these three dots. When you click on that, you can click on archive and it will go away. And so in dotloop, one thing to know is that it never really does go away. It's just been archived or hidden. That's also important to know. Once you upload a document, you can't unupload it. Your options are to replace it, or move it essentially, or you can archive it. So sometimes I see people do that where they're like, oh crap, this was a seller counter offer and I meant for it to be a multiple counter, so we'll archive it and then re-upload and rename it kind of the same name. So then I end up having two duplicates in here. So be careful when you're archiving things. You can move documents from placeholder to placeholder. So if, for example, this is a seller multiple counter, but I uploaded it into the regular counter offer, you can still go here and replace it, and it will leave this placeholder here and now put it in this placeholder. So that is really helpful, again, because as we're going through, sometimes you'll be going really quickly and uploading things one at a time, and it'll end up getting in the wrong spot. So those are a couple of options for you.
And then one thing I want to touch on, I don't know if you were going to touch on this, but I think the best practice is to upload the blank documents into these areas and then use the sharing mechanism and the signing mechanism to have your client sign it. So it's all ready into the system, right?
Yes, you can do that. So let me show you, just since we're on the topic, we may as well just do it. I also like to kind of collapse these folders because, again, it's a long list. It gets obnoxious. So if if you have your listing and you've submitted it and your listing folder's been approved, just collapse it, get it out of the way visually. Then you're not scrolling for years.
Right. And just super quick, you probably mentioned this, but I'm never going to stop, reminding people, once you put your file in there, you do have to go to the top and click the little mini submit for review button, which is not very conspicuous. It's like kind of hidden up there. So I've had a lot of agents be like, I'm submit, and so what'll happen, guys, is agents will put the file in there, and then they'll think that we know that you've put it there. So the compliance team doesn't know you've put it there unless you click submit for review. So that's a huge, huge thing that everybody's got to remember.
Yeah. And I'll get into more detail on that aspect, but it is, okay, especially for some of you that were used to SkySlope had no way to submit a file for review. So if you were like, oh my gosh, I have this we're waiting on this one document. Okay, it's uploaded, it's ready, you can look at it now. Like, there wasn't a way to notify the compliance team in SkySlope. So in a way, this is really helpful to have this feature, but a lot of agents maybe are in the habit of just like, well, it's up there.
Yeah.
If you've uploaded it from the compliance perspective, the auditing perspective, one, we don't get notified that it's ready to be reviewed, because like Kevin was saying, you can put a document in here, and then from here, maybe you want it to get signed. Maybe you want, let me see here. Let's add our affiliated. So you can go to our templates and Alta affiliated, and it will upload that document in here. So now the document is in here. And maybe from here, maybe you want to add a signature and you want your client to sign it. And so it's uploaded into the loop, but it's not ready to be reviewed yet. Because if you submit it and I review it, I'm going to go, it's not signed. Why did
you do that?
Yeah. So just because it's uploaded doesn't mean that it's ready for review. So, no, I don't. Okay. So, so that's important to keep in mind, that is required. The other thing too is that once you do submit it for review, or let me rewind. If you haven't submitted it for review, we're not notified that it's there, but we can log in and see it. Like, we can look it up and see, oh, well, yeah, I see these documents are in here, but they haven't been reviewed yet, or they haven't been submitted for review yet. And so a lot of times the response I'll get is like, okay, well, can you just review it then? Because you can see it, so just review it. I can't. On the back end system, it won't give me the option to approve it or reject the document. It has to be submitted for review first. So that all kind of ties into why these documents, these placeholders, are listed as optional now, because from an auditing perspective, I would much rather have a file submitted for review 10 times than one time at the very end. A couple of reasons. One, usually when you're submitting the file at the very end, I'm looking at probably 40 to 50 documents that are uploaded, and it takes a long time. And people, when they've submitted it and they're ready to close and they want their CDA, and it takes a while to go through all of those documents. The other thing is that maybe you're at the very end and there's an issue with your listing documents. Maybe you didn't get a modification of terms when you changed the listing price for your client. That's a big deal. You need something documenting changing, hey, we lowered your sale price or your list price. These are things that need to be caught sooner rather than later. And you don't want to go back to your client, 60, 90 days after signing this listing agreement and go, hey, I need you to sign this document that even though we're already in escrow, I'm going to close in 2 days. It just makes you sound stupid. So submit sooner rather than later. And in order to do that, so I'll walk you through that process now for submitting to review. You upload the documents. Now you can just submit whatever you have, you can submit it. And so when you go through this process, it's going to ask you a couple of things. One, it will say, in order to submit, we need this information first. And I'll get to, I'm just going to make a quick note here that I go back to this. But these are some details that the first time you submit your loop to be reviewed, you have to have this information. So it will prompt you. Whether or not this is an Op City lead, we need to know. And then it's going to want this property address. If you've pulled the information from MLS, it will auto-populate this. Oops. Number, California.
Oh, that's
Famous zip code 90210. Okay. So that's the basic information it will ask, right? And then it's going to say, which folders do you want to submit for review? And a couple of things. If you don't have documents in the folder, don't submit it for review. Only submit the ones that you have. So we didn't submit any escrow documents, so don't select that folder. You can just submit it by folder. That document checklist, that just has our checklist. That doesn't need to get reviewed. So don't submit that. So you just check the box. This is the folder of the documents that you want to have reviewed. The other thing, there are two different options for submitting a file for review. They are pre-filled in here, so you should not have to change them. If you do change them, you can't change them back. And what I mean by that is, for offer documents, you have an option to submit it for file review or this CDA review. But you'll see here, this note is for the escrow folder only. So only the escrow folder should have this CDA review option checked. Sometimes agents will be like, I'm submitting these folders and I want a CDA, so they'll make every single folder a CDA review folder. That just triggers a whole mess on the back end of our stuff, because and now it's asking for like multiple different kinds of CDAs, and it makes a big mess. So these are already pre-filled for the type of review. Because on the back end, when you submit something for file review, for auditing purposes, the options for file review are, it's either approved, returned to the agent, or declined, needs more work or something like that. And then for the CDA review, your CDA is either approved or your CDA is declined. And so it just gets really confusing. It's hard to tell kind of where the status is if it's not selected properly. So anyway, you pick your folder, then you can submit it. You don't really need to tell me why you're submitting it. You can if you want. And then you submit. And now you'll see you'll see in the folders now, right? We didn't submit any of these other ones. We only submitted the offer documents, and it's changed now to needs review. So that's how you know it's been submitted. And then you'll see here, the documents we uploaded have now changed to submitted. And if you kind of hover over it, it will tell you kind of what that status is. On the back end, we get notified that documents have been submitted for review. And again, part of the review process is it will typically take about, the longest would be 2 business days. We try to do it on a regular basis. But again, when we get like 10, 15 files that are full 50 document files that are submitted at the very, very end, it clogs up the system for everybody else. So it ends up, we have to take that maximum 2 days just to get to your file, because we've been reviewing entire files. You know, if you're like, I only submitted 2 documents, why is it taking so long? That's typically why. So, so we'll go through, we'll review the documents, and there is an option once the documents get reviewed. You will see, let me go back here. I submitted it on this one. So this is the one we just created. This was a loop that I created prior, and you'll see there's this little notification bell, which means something's been done on it. And so when we go in here to see these documents, you will now see these 2 documents that were submitted. This one's been marked as approved. Great. This one has been marked as returned. So you'll be able to see out of your whole list of documents, which ones have been returned. Okay, so then the next question is, okay, well, this was returned, why? And what will happen is, of course, I didn't do it on this one because I was going too fast, but you'll see up in here in this notes section that you will have a note from us saying what corrections are needed, what documents missing, what signature is missing, what we need for the file. In the beginning, we were sending out, every time we go through each document, we would send a note. This document's missing a signature. This document's not fully executed. Well, when we would do that, it would send a notification to you as the agent every single time. And nobody wants that. So at the very end, we're able to kind of go through and collect together all the documents that are needed. Sometimes it's not just a correction to an existing document. Maybe there's one that's just missing altogether. Hey, there's possession is 3 days after close of escrow. We're going to need you to upload this missing document. So all of those notes are going to be in here. The other thing that's really important to know about this is who gets these notifications. So it's going to be whomever whoever is listed on the transaction as a party of this transaction. So if your TC comes in and uses your access and your login and they upload all of this stuff and then it gets audited, your TC is not going to get notified of any of those corrections. You're going to be the one that's going to get that email message.
Right.
And so what you want to do is make sure that, now we're going to get into this whole view details tab, which is really important. But you want to add any other party to the transaction. And so in order to do that, we go into this view details. And you'll see here under people, right? So you have, whomever, that's who's going to get your main notifications. And then obviously the admin team. That's the default of who gets added. Now, if you want to add a person, okay, let's see, I think I might already be in here. Okay, so you'll see you add in kind of their basic information. You don't really need to send them an intro email. You might want to if you're adding clients, which you would need to do to then send them documents to sign. They'd have to be added as a contact. But for TC purposes or for assistant purposes or admin purposes, you want to make sure that you check this box, add to my team. And so when you add them, they're going to then be available in the dropdown for the auditing of like, who's going to get this notification, who's going to get a copy of the CDA once it's been signed by the broker, all of that stuff. They're going to be able to receive this information. So you would add them onto your team. And then another required element is going to be their role. So I think there's a transaction coordinator. Yeah. So there's a TC option. You don't have to fill in any of this other stuff. Those are the basics. But you would then add this person. So now they're available as an option in your loop. And you would have to do that on each time. So now you see them listed and you can send messages to them individually if you wanted to, or, when I am auditing, I can then send a response back to both of you. So that's important to note.
And then of
Since we're-
course, if you added a
Yeah.
person and didn't put it on your team like a client, then they're not going to get these, the
Notifications, correct.
notifications, but you're going to be able to, get them to sign things through the system.
Exactly.
And then also, I do have
So-
a couple other little questions here in the
Sure.
chat. All right, so first of all, Alejandro asks, do we have to make the folders? No. So when you select the type of transaction, it auto populates those folders for you. Right, Lauren?
Correct. Yes, it will. The template that you apply has these folders already created. If you go into a loop, let's just do it for fun.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it will let you. Whatever.
Right.
So let's not add a template. Let's go through this whole thing, view your loop. Now here you are. So
no folders.
you don't have any folders. You don't have any, I mean, there's nothing to add here. And so it makes it really difficult. And like I said, you can't apply a template later. So you can load a task template, which is a whole other thing. I'll let you guys
Right.
check out .loop for that stuff. But you can't. Let me see if maybe it'll let you. Let's see what type. Purchase. Yeah, it won't even let you add it. So then you're kind of like, and then you'll be on my list also because I won't have a checklist. I have to do this all from memory. You're just dumping a bunch of documents in here.
Right.
So please don't do that. Yeah. So that's what it would look like. So you really want to pick your template because then when you do that, it will pre-apply those folders and those placeholders. And it's just a little bit easier to figure out kind of what you need and why.
And then I have two more questions.
Yeah.
Tom is asking, he says that .loop is requesting the CR number 2 to be submitted, but there's no CR2. So I'm not sure what, what do you think?
Yes. So what he means is this option here, a CR number 1, CR number 2. So if CR number 1 is full contingency removal, that's what this means, CR number 2 or full contingency removal. And the reason that's there is you might get 3 contingency removals, you might get 1 contingency removal, but we need at least the full contingency removal. And again, this is kind of what I mean by like, you can rename these documents. So maybe you say, this is just CR number 2, and then I want to add this other document because this one is CR number 3. Right. So it's more of a note of like, we at least need the full contingency removal. That, I mean, I guess I can touch on that now. No, I'm going to go back. You said there was a second question. I hope that kind of explained that a little bit.
Yeah, no, okay. And Tom, put in the chat if there's something additional that you'd like to answer on that. Yeah. And then Anna asked, how many people on the compliance team? So she's asking 72 hours. We were previously told it's actually 48, right?
Yeah, ideally, yeah.
Ideally, expected review time 48. So she says that's an eternity when we're scrambling to get 1 or 2 docs from the other side and getting the CD8 time. So what's our little comment for that?
It is. And that is why it's so important to be uploading as you go and submitting for review as you go. The compliance requirements to release the CDA are not, we don't need every single document and every single placeholder complete. We're not going to hold a CDA if the other side initial is missing on page 1 of the lead-based paint. Like, we're looking for, and I guess this is kind of a time to discuss as far as the CDAs go, that the CDAs are not automatic. Like I said in the beginning, this is sort of that exchange, right? The agent wants to get paid and the broker doesn't want to get sued. So what we found is, if we release the CDA as soon as it gets requested, the chances of us getting a complete file after that are slim to none. And it's not a malicious thing. It's just a mental thing. You get that check, you're done with that file. And mentally you're like, I'm done. I don't need anything else.
Right.
But we want to make sure that if that's the case, you know, there's still some things in order to release the CDA. We want to have, you know, all the statutory documents, right? Everything loaded up through the reports and documents folder, right? So all the basics would need to get submitted. You don't have to submit the closing statement or, you know, this whole folder here, the closing documents. This is going to come after closing. But I can tell you, I have agents and TCs that have beautiful files, totally complete, get their CDAs, and I'm still chasing them down to come back and upload these things. So it's definitely out of sight, out of mind. And we want to make sure that if we're going to provide a CDA, which essentially says, just give the agent their money directly, right? Because it's supposed to all go to the broker and then the broker disperses from there. The CDA is saying, okay, just give us ours and then give the agent theirs directly. And so we don't need this section. But if you go through and you're thinking about it, right, you get your listing, you submit your listing documents, and you now you've submitted it, they've been reviewed, they've been approved. Great. Now your property's in MLS, you're going through negotiations. Now you've opened escrow. Great, we've opened escrow. We have offer documents. You should have all of these offer documents, and maybe something that was needed while it was a listing. Let's say you submitted your listing documents, and I don't know why this is still a thing, but the start date or an expiration date is missing from your listing agreement. So we're going to need a modification of terms. Well, then maybe when you come in and upload all your offer documents, then you go ahead and upload this correction here for your listing documents. Now you have your offer submitted, you're going through your due diligence phases, right? And so what happens at that time? You get your inspections, you're going to get the deposits going to come in, you're going to get escrow instructions if you have them in your area. I know it depends throughout California. You're going to at least have a deposit. Escrow, for the most part, is going to confirm the contract because it is escrow instructions. So the escrow company should confirm the contract. You'll get your reports, right? You're going to get your NHD report. You should have that within 7 days. That's a statutory disclosure. The prelim, you usually get that with the escrow package while you're opening escrow. During your due diligence period, which is default 17 days, but I think everybody right now is like 5 days or 10 days. So within 10 days of opening escrow, you should have a home inspection report. You should have a termite report if it's part of the contract. You should also have the disclosures. If you're full contingency removal, maybe you have a 30-day escrow, but the buyer has 17 days to remove all their contingencies. If they've removed their contingencies, you should have all your disclosures back. So by day 17 of escrow, of a 30-day escrow, you should have all of this stuff and submit it. And so if that's the case, then you submit it and you can request a CDA, and you can get a CDA 2 weeks before escrow closes. It's totally doable. But if all of this stuff gets submitted 5 days before escrow closes, and it's a 3-day weekend coming up, which we don't do compliance review over weekends or the holidays, then it's going to be a tight squeeze to try and review all of that information. And then if it comes back, which I've seen, because people aren't familiar with the system, I'll see they've uploaded an Avid. There's an Avid in each placeholder, but it's the same Avid. And so we'll say, this isn't, we have 2 Avids from the other agent. We need your Avid. I can't release the CDA unless we have your Avid. So, it's things like that. It's really conditional, but it's also avoidable and preventable if we can do it and submit these files sooner rather than later. Because as compliance review, I need to be able to go back to our broker and say, basically, if you get audited, you'll be fine based on this file. And so that's my reputation. And that's, our goal for compliance is to make sure that all those parties are protected. The other thing to note is that, let's say there's something that is required, right? I think I had just recently, sometimes agents on the other side, you hear all kinds of things. And I just had a conversation yesterday with one of our agents. The agent on the other side said, I'm selling my own home, so I don't need to provide you a seller property questionnaire. I've never heard that before in my life. But if that's the case, we just need documentation, right? And so if they're representing the buyer and the seller says, I'm not going to provide you with this disclosure, just save that email and upload the email in here. Let's say you're on the buyer side and you have your Avid, right? And so you send that back to the seller. You're like, hey, I need my Avid signed. And they don't respond to you. All you have to do is ask them 3 times per the DRE requirements. You have to have it in writing 3 times. And just a side note, compliance wise, the more specific you are, the better. So every time you ask, if there's multiple items, list each item that you're asking for, because that way, maybe you have a list of 5 things and they send you 1 item. But if you follow up on that email and go, hey, I still need these documents. I still need these documents. Well, what documents? Be specific. And then just upload those emails. So that should satisfy that requirement. If you're like, I don't have this document, or they won't send it to me, or they said my office doesn't require it, so I'm not giving it to you. Okay, fine. Just it's in writing. Just upload that email. That's really all we need.
Yeah, and I have one question from Alejandro. He says, does
Okay.
the PC wait to check the file before he says bar is completely filled in? So I think he means all of the things are filled in. No. So once you upload something and click the submit for review, the team will check it out prior to having everything filled in. And that's kind of the point, Alejandro, is to make sure that you're submitting these things as you go, so there's not just 49 documents at the end.
Right, exactly. And the other thing to keep in mind, just from a compliance perspective and transparency, so that you guys know, we're looking for more than just, is the document there and is it fully executed? For some of these documents, as we're going through, yes, that's what we want to check. But we're also cross-referencing entire file details and looking through the documents, looking through the contract. Hey, there's this line that got buried in this section because it's a blank space, and we all know how I feel about agents having blank spaces in contracts to fill out with whatever words they want. Maybe it didn't get seen. Maybe you missed it. We're also checking when you upload your commission instructions, we've calculated out that amount. And I can't tell you how many times the commission instructions come over and I say, these are short, you're missing money, or this dollar amount is higher, you're paying the other side higher than what was in your listing agreement. Your listing agreement said 2% each side, but your escrow instructions are calculating out 2.5 to the other agent. So is that a mistake, or do we need to now go back to your listing documents and provide a modification of terms? So these things are all conditional, and it's constantly moving and it's constantly changing. And so it's important to submit as you go multiple times throughout the transaction. Because again, that stuff is getting cross-referenced. You might submit your listing documents, then you'll submit your offer documents, and then I'll get all the way down to the prelim and I'll go, this property's in a trust, but you've had just the sellers, the signers sign everything. Okay, well now we got to go back up to the offer documents and we're going to need to clarify the contract. Who are the sellers? Sometimes I'll see that in the escrow instructions where I'm like, why are there 3 lines here now, but there's only 2 signatures throughout the whole transaction? So it's really more than just a quick at a glance. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's signed. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's signed. I've come across times where I'm looking at the signed disclosures and I'm like, there's 2 sellers. That looks weird. Well, in the digital signature program, 1 seller signed in both spots in all of the disclosures. So now you got to go back and you got to have that other seller sign their signature because there's only a signature for 1 seller twice. These are all really important details, and it's time consuming. So when you get an audit note that says, we need this document, and then you submit the document, it's not just, okay, great, we can check that off. It's okay, now maybe you didn't fill out that document correctly, or maybe there's things in that document that now change other things in the document. Oh, we got an addendum, correcting this date, but also item number 2 on this addendum says we're changing buyers. Okay, well now we need a different, that's going to trigger something different. So it's a conversation. It's things that we want you to consider us as a second, third, fourth pair of eyes throughout the transaction. Our thought process is worst case scenario. Worst case scenario 3 years from now. That is really the mindset as we're going through these files, and really how you should be approaching your documentation. When you're filling out your agent visual disclosure, you should be filling it out. If I have to go to court in 3 years, what do I need to know about this property? If you go through and you're like, fine, you need to be able to demonstrate, yeah, you were at that property. You need to make actual notes. You have to complete your agent visual either on the Avid document, which is what our brokerage requires, or on page 3 of the TDS, the transfer disclosure. But you have to note, it's a requirement that you've been to the property and that you've made these notes and completed that inspection. So kind of keep that in mind. That's our mindset, is like, you might know, oh yeah, we already talked about, I'll give you an example. A lot of times in the contract, possession will be close of escrow plus 3 days. And we get closer to closing and I say, we need the seller in possession form. Oh, well, there's no rent back anymore. Okay, well, you might know that, but on paper, there's still a rent back. So if there comes an issue where now we've closed, you're like, we don't have a rent back anymore. Your client goes to move into the property and the seller's still there. Well, we had that rent back. I didn't think I would need it, but I actually do. So I'm going to need these 3 days because it's in the contract. That's an issue. You need to document and you need to update all of these little items. And that's kind of what we're here for, to, again, protect all parties.
Well said.
Okay. I'm not the bad guy, guys. Don't hate me. The other tool that I wanted to go over with for you guys was available in the template section here. It's the file approval and the CDA release process. And I covered a ton of information today, and it's a little overwhelming, but come on. Okay. So this is the process, and it goes through line by line. Oh, that was, see, I made a note to go back to that and I never did. Okay. So how to do step by step, right? So entering your listing. Oops. where to find, here's how to add your person, right? We talked about this. Make them a role. If you want them to get notified, add them to your team. These are the documents. Here they are listed. This is what we're going to need. This is the minimum that I'm going to look for in your listing documents when you submit them. So have at least these items. Then go up here and click submit for review. These are the options that we were talking about of, and then it tells you once submitted, the team will be notified. You'll receive, the review within those 2 business days. Let's say you don't have a listing. These are quick links that will jump you to that specific section. So when you're ready to open escrow, but you've already submitted your listing, this is how you would do it. If you're ready to open escrow and it's your buyer, skip all that other stuff and just jump straight to the page here for opening escrow with your buyer and what you need to know. This is great to pass along to your TC, to your admin, what's going to be required. This section goes along with the CDA. And so this is part of the process of how to, when you're ready for your CDA, right? And how to request it. So you're going to click on view details, and let me go over that right now while we're in here.
So again, to get to that, you just go to templates and you guys can all download that.
Correct. Templates, and it's available. So let's go into our loop, and you may submit all of your documents and you're ready for your CDA, and you submit the file and you submit the escrow documents with CDA requested. And it's like, okay, great. I want to give you, your file looks great. We're ready to release the CDA. We need some information from you still in order to properly process that CDA. And so you'll click on those view details, and you'll see right here, second or third from the top, CDA request must be complete to release the CDA. I have been lax on this section, but really it's caused things to get forgotten or left off, or we need revisions, and then when everybody's in a rush to get their CDA, then they're like, no, I forgot. We need to be reimbursed for the stager, or, oh yeah, we're paying the home warranty, or whatever, right? There's all these different changes. So this section is going to allow the CDA to be completed correctly. And so these are your basic items, right? Who are you representing? What side? If there's a referral, and then it says, are all required fields complete? So that is, as you go through underneath the CDA request section, these are all other sections that you should fill out this information. You should fill out, the year the property was built, your contract dates, really this financial section, right? What those commission splits are going to be. Sometimes I'll come in here and see, well, your commission split's different than what's on the listing agreement, or, maybe you've done your math wrong, or you didn't factor in a price change or something like that. And then obviously if there's a referral, then we're going to need this information about the referral so that we can put it on the CDA. So I'm going to ask, are these fields completed? Yes or no? This is just a reminder for you. Oh yeah, I got to go fill all that stuff out. Okay, great. Yes, it's done. The agent payee name. A lot of you guys would like your checks written to your corporation. So this is where you would say, who do we pay this? Who do we pay this to? What's maybe your full legal name and not the nickname that you go by? And then the mailing address. If you want your check mailed to you directly, or you can put in here, to wire or to be wired or something like that. So this is for you, how you want your funds on the CDA to be reflected. And then there are 3 fields for additional payees, right? So if you have a compliance person, if you need to pay for, get reimbursed for or pay a stager, or what are some other things? Maybe there's people on your team that you need to split, the fee with. Maybe there's another agent or something like that. So put that information in there. Again, who are we making it out to? Is it a company? Is it a name? How much are we paying them? What is that deduction? And then their address, or where the funds are going to get sent to. And then also a section for the TC, if the TC has any of those specifics. And then this OpCity lead question was already required to begin with when you submitted the file. And so you can see, if I made all of these fields required, the first time you go to submit your listing agreement, it's going to say, well, we need to know when your closing date is, or we need to know what your co-op agent commission is. Like, you don't know that information. So we're trying to make this as easy to submit as possible. It's really, at the end of the day, we just want you to submit your documents as often and as soon as possible. And then in the financial section, there's also just your basic sales price commission splits. But also this section here is important for any commission reductions or credit. So let's say maybe you're crediting your client for repairs, or you're covering the cost of the home warranty or anything like that. So, let's say you are crediting them, you're reducing your commission, $80 or something like that. And then you just say for repairs. So this lets us know, again, what's the reduction for? Why do we need to, how do we note this in the CDA? And so that's kind of it for me. I think those are all the points I touched on. But really it's a collaborative relationship that I want to have with you guys. I want to get you a CDA. I want to get these files out of the backlog as soon as possible. And so in order to do that, these are the things that we're asking of you as the agent, the information we need from you, the documents we need from you, and then how you're going to get that information from us. When the CDA is ready, it'll get uploaded here and then sent for broker signature. So once it gets signed, then you will again get a notification, hey, this has been signed and it's ready to be uploaded in here. So a lot of times it'll be sitting in here signed, and then the agent will still be like, I need the CDA. Well, this is where you're going to check. This is where you're going to get notified. This is why it's important, if you have a TC or an admin or an assistant, to make sure that they're getting notified and they're in the loop as well, because you guys are busy and you're not in your emails all the time. And so you might miss that notification. We do not automatically send these CDAs to escrow. At the same time, if we're releasing your CDA, we can also get the commission signed as well. So you can just upload the commission instructions. We'll get those signed together. If there is something that needs a broker signature in the meantime, or maybe even after the CDA, you can just send us a note. Like, let's say, oh, after all of this stuff, we need to, we need broker approval because we're going to reduce our commission, or we're adding a credit or something like that. Whatever the cause is for those changes, we ask that you upload that document, right? If you need a revision to this CDA, and then you would just resubmit it again, because we'll have to revise the CDA and then we can get the broker to sign it. I think that's, in the approval process guide here, it also goes over how to request a CDA change or a correction. And then again, if you have any questions, this is where you can ask those questions, and where our information is. And that's kind of all I got.
Yeah, well, that's a lot, isn't it? Oh yeah, very, very important stuff. So cool. And you guys, of course, this is just a massive issue. So we really want to make sure that you guys, if you have to go back over this this webinar, feel free to do that. And also, feel free to get in touch with us if you have questions. Bill, any final thoughts for you?
Yeah, there's a few, but very, very, very thorough, Lauren. Appreciate that. Like you said, Kevin, this is on a replay. So that is the beauty of having this recorded, that you don't have to retain all this information in one sitting. If you're using a TC, which I recommend, personally, I know where my strengths are. My strengths are, getting new business and dealing with my clients. And I personally don't want to spend the couple hours to maybe do this on a file. And I will go ahead and pay the money to a TC. And just so I know that peace of mind is there. If you're using the TC, this is a great link replay to send out to your TC if they're not already familiar with .loop, because they can spend the 45 minutes or so to walk through this, understand the process. I know it sounds like a lot, but I think you go through creating the loop, getting the checklist, the folders. Once you do this once or twice, it will be very easy. It's not a huge process. As far as uploading docs, I think using a calendar is a very useful tool, because right after X amount of days, boom, I need to have all the escrow information, EMD, prelim. You can do it just in literal 3 increments as far as the way I look at it. Lauren, you might, agree or disagree, but I think that, you can pretty much segment the whole transaction into probably 3 uploads, 3 reviews, fairly easy, and it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, that's fine.
You
I'll
know
take
what
what
I
I
mean?
can get.
Right. And I think, if you just make little calendar notes, okay, boom, day 7, I'm going to shoot for this. Day 14 or day 17, I'm pretty much assuming I'm going to have all this stuff done. And then obviously prior to close, all trailing documents that are getting ready in my CDAs out by the 3rd week of a traditional 30-day escrow. I think that's pretty reasonable and easy. And, this is the part of our business that we don't particularly like for most agents. But unfortunately, it's our profession. And we're using a professional license to sell properties that are, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. And there's a lot riding on all this stuff. So, when I got licensed, the contract was 5 pages. Now it's 14 pages. So, there's a reason for that. And Lauren mentioned that earlier. It's because there's been lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. So they keep having to add, maybe there was only, 8 or 9 statutory disclosures. And, around 2000, when I started in the business, now there's a lot more. It's not because we're trying to add workload or paperwork. It's because that's the reality of our industry. And we all can strive to be better agents, more organized, and doing a better job, and that's myself included. It's an evolving thing. We all have to address it. It's no one's above it, and it's part of what we do, and we need to make sure that we're mindful of that. And that's really, I'll leave it there. But we do this to help you guys and help the brokerage. And it does seem like it's a lot, or we're not trying to be punitive, but we are trying to protect you guys, your clients, the brokerage. And so I think if everyone's mindful of all this stuff moving forward, it shouldn't be a big deal. And we're not going to, withhold the CDA on a document or 2. We're going to, have some, a little bit of flexibility. I won't say leniency, but flexibility if there's something specific. But you do have the responsibility to showcase that you're going to follow up after the CDA is released with maybe that document, and not be that serial agent that constantly can't finish the file. So my last thing is, if this is not your strong suit, use a TC. You guys are making the absolute lion's share of the money. You need to be able to incorporate that into your business and use the TC.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will note just from that 3-day weekend, there is a little bit of a backlog for a lot of the files. So hopefully everybody will get reviewed and moved through today. But I just ask for a little bit of patience in that department as we try and get everything caught up.
Absolutely. Well, very good. And then on the screen, guys, is just I just always want to remind you that you can go to YouTube, do a search for Alt Realty Group, go to our YouTube channel, you should subscribe to the YouTube channel. And this is where all of the webinars live. And if you didn't get a chance to go through Lauren's 5-part series on the new RPA form, those are all here too. So if you're a new agent and you didn't get to see that, those are all there for you. So And today's replay will be here too, probably by the afternoon when Tyler gets it uploaded. So don't hesitate to go to our YouTube channel, use it as a resource, and really appreciate you guys spending time with us on the Wednesday webinars. It's super important. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Bill. And agents, get out there, make it a great week and a productive week. And we'll see you guys next week on the ARG Wednesday webinar. Have a great week. Bye-bye.